welcome back.
Welcome to April. Welcome back to school. Welcome back from spring break. Welcome to the fourth 9 weeks of the school year. I hope you had a fantastic spring break and you were able to relax and spend some time with your family and your friends. I am recording this prior to spring break, so I'm going to guess that on spring break I got to spend a lot of time with my girls and maybe see some family that I haven't seen in a while. But it's good to be back. This week, we're actually tackling a topic that I hope is going to be really interesting for you because it's going to affect a lot of your professional lives in the next few years or even the next few months. As I mentioned before spring break, I had wanted to, when we got back, spend some time with some economics topics. And so this week, we're looking at state government and economics with regards to occupational licensing. Oh, you didn't know that occupational licensing affected you? Let me explain how. Occupational licensing, also known as occupational licensure, is a form of government regulation requiring a license to pursue a particular profession or vocation for compensation, for a paycheck. You may not have considered how this affects you personally, but think about the fact that a doctor or a lawyer, they need a license to practice. And that makes sense. They can negatively or positively affect our lives in many ways. So if you want to be a doctor, you have a license to practice medicine. And if you want to be a lawyer, you have a license to practice law. But it doesn't stop there. And you guys know that. Take a look at this list. These are all the credentials and certifications that you can earn here at CTech, because as you've learned, you need a license to practice a lot of different careers. Those of you who are in the cosmetology program know that you need to earn a lot of hours before you're legally eligible to take the test and then work in a salon. Let's look at the UK, where they don't require that for their barbers.
Good afternoon, I'm Asad Ahmed. There's a fear that the rapidly growing number of barber shops in London could be compromising the health and safety of customers. It's because anyone here can have a shop and start cutting hair and giving shaves to customers, unlike in America, Australia and several European countries, which require barbers to be trained and have a licence. Ben Hunt has been investigating.
For millions of men, visiting a barber is fairly routine. Usually, they leave looking and feeling better. But things can go wrong. Boils, bald patches and infections, and all because of dirty equipment. Walking down London's high streets, you'll see more barber shops than ever before. They're the top spots for trendy haircuts and popular meeting places. But the UK's barbering industry is difficult to regulate, and barbers here don't even need a licence to practice. For some in the capital, this is causing huge problems.
They were here and here.
Meet Jacob. He got a fungal infection after his barber used dirty tools to cut his hair.
In the summer of 2015, I started to get some pretty bad bumps on my head, and there'd be pus coming out, and every time I'd wake up, I'd look down my pillow and there'd be spots of blood everywhere. So I was put on antibiotics for a combined time of about 4 weeks, but nothing really. It would subside, but it would just come back straight after that. And it was quite painful, quite itchy. I wasn't able to shave without opening up the wounds again.
Dirty clippers or razors at barbershops can put customers at risk of bacterial and viral infections, like folliculitis, herpes, and warts, to name a few.
We are seeing more and more of this, and if the barber isn't trained, then in fact what can happen is there's an entry of bacteria into the scalp, the hair bulb becomes infected, and then they have an infection. If you're trained, you would know that it's very important to sterilise your equipment.
But not everyone is doing that. Take a look at these pictures we took inside an East London barbershop. Bloodstained and rusty razors. We showed them to one of the industry's leading figures.
And there's just hair everywhere, there's teeth missing. The councils, I think, need to get involved with health and safety and just check. And not shut down people, help people. Tell them what the legislation is, and people get a qualification, they understand everything else.
At the London School of Barbering, hygiene is high up on the priority list for these students, who must complete 3 months of training before they can practice professionally.
USA and Australia, you have to gain X amount of hours to gain your licence. Here in the UK, you don't. I think that's something that is essential to the health and safety of our customers. You know, you wouldn't go to a mechanic that wasn't qualified, would you?
We contacted all of London's 32 councils, but none could tell us how many barbershops operated in their area, and only one was looking into complaints. So while it doesn't look like anything will be changing soon, it's vital that customers are aware of the risks and always look out for the signs. Ben Hunt, BBC
So while
London
you
News.
and many others are frustrated with the time and the money that you have to put into becoming a licensed barber or a dental hygienist, advocates for occupational licensing argue that we need these licenses for the public's health and safety. And not just for my hair and my teeth. I'm looking at you, auto tech. I want you to be licensed before you start working on the brakes in my car. Do you remember what federalism is? Federalism says that powers are shared between the national government and the state governments or the local governments. It was actually on your assessment last week. Anyway, if you remember when we talked about federalism back when we talked about the 10th Amendment, you might remember seeing this image where I told you that licensing is often required by the states, or it's often a power of the states. So for instance, I think I told you back then, and I'm going to tell you again, I'm licensed to teach in the state of Ohio, but there are some states that if I move to, I would no longer be qualified, and I'd have to retest and be licensed by that state. If you can't tell, my point of that is that not everyone's on board and not everyone agrees with the idea of occupational licensing. Now, those who agree with it talk about a number of things. I already mentioned public health and safety, but also the economy. They argue that if you get a license, then people have to pay you more because you're licensed. And if you get paid more, you get to spend more, which helps our economy. And they argue that it prevents consumers from being scammed.
Think about a home improvement contractor accused of ripping off customers. A growing number of Central Floridians say Alex Ferguson took their money, then took off.
News 6 investigator Mike DeForest has been following this story for us. He is live in studio. And Mike, this guy does not even have a license.
Lisa, Alex Ferguson is not a licensed contractor. In fact, we've learned he has no construction licenses at all. Several former customers tell us that this guy has a really good and convincing sales pitch, but they soon regretted hiring him.
The gentleman represented himself as a licensed insured contractor.
It's on his contract.
Doug and Kelly Lavorsi are trying to get results, not for themselves.
We're not getting that money back. We know that.
They want results for you by warning about Alex Ferguson, an unlicensed contractor.
We want to make sure that it just doesn't happen to anybody else here.
The couple needed someone to build a garage on their property, so they posted an ad on Craigslist.
He told us that he was able to get concrete cheaper than everybody else.
Ferguson immediately impressed them.
This man had an answer for everything. He does know the construction business.
The Laborsis signed this contract, which identifies Alex Ferguson as the contractor, and paid him a nearly $5,000 deposit. Days later, they say Ferguson demanded another check for nearly $10,000 to purchase supplies.
He needed it to be able to get the cement, and I said, go ahead and give it to him.
That concrete never arrived, according to the couple, yet Ferguson continued to ask for even more money. When the Lavorsis refused to pay him anymore, they say the contractor stopped talking to them.
I tried leaving voicemails. He's texted him. He's leaving voicemails. He has just fallen off the face of the earth.
He does not have a license, and tonight there's a warrant out for his arrest.
Last year, News 6 revealed that Ferguson is wanted in Colorado for allegedly ripping off customers who hired him on Craigslist.
You've taken my mom's money. You haven't started the job.
Gilbert Feliciano's mother is among several Central Floridians who say they paid Ferguson thousands of dollars for construction work, but got little to nothing in return.
I just couldn't believe I got taken like that.
After Marty Fuchs complained to the state's licensing department, the agency issued Ferguson this cease and desist letter and fined him $4,000. The Lavorsis learned about Ferguson's past only after he took their money.
I called you because you've already done a story on him, and because it's still happening. He's still out there, and he's still going to keep doing it to other people.
Now, just a few hours ago, I received this email from Alex Ferguson. He claims he cleared up that warrant in Colorado, something we could not immediately verify. Here in Florida, authorities are investigating new allegations against Ferguson, but he has not been charged with any crimes related to his construction business.
So, Mike, the big takeaway here, how can people avoid being victimized by people possibly like this?
We are actually really lucky here in Florida. The state posts contractor licenses online. We've made it real easy for you to find them. Just look for this story on our website, clickorlando.com. Before you hire anyone, simply type in their name and see if they have those required licenses.
And these guys are good. They're, I mean, such smooth talkers. They sound so convincing, and you want to trust them, but you got to do your homework.
And what happens is they'll say, I'm licensed, and they play the part so well, you don't go and just do this easy step, getting online to check.
All right, Mike DeForest, thank you.
So as a consumer, I know that if someone has a license, they went through the education and the training and the hours to ensure that they're capable of doing their job. So listen, I admittedly have offered you only really one side of the argument on occupational licensing. There are many who are against it for very legitimate reasons. For instance, I've earned my teacher's license in Ohio, but if me and my family decide to move to Iowa, does that mean I no longer know how to teach? Have I lost all of my qualifications just because we've traveled a few states away? I'm actually having you on the second Ed Puzzle this week watch a video of someone explaining why they're not a big fan of occupational licensing and some negatives to it. And so that's why I'm not spending that much time in this video on that. I don't want to repeat too much information that you're going to get in the Ed Puzzle. If you haven't guessed it, that's what you're going to do this week. You're going to decide, is occupational licensure a good or a bad policy? And I really want you to take into consideration what it means for you. Are you glad that you're going to go through this training so that you can proudly say, I have earned my license and I am eligible to work in this career? Or is it just a bunch of hoops you have to jump through when you're already capable of doing some of the things required in your future career? Let me refresh your memory on how these CTQs work. When you open the assignment, you're going to take a look at the case for both occupational licensing being a good or a bad policy. So if you are for occupational licensing, you'll notice that there's two of the videos that I already showed you in this video, and then there's also an article. And then if you are against occupational licensing, so if you were more aligned with the second Ed Puzzle that I assigned you this week, you can take a look at some of these short videos or also read this article. Then you'll make your decision. So if you agree that occupational licensing is a good thing, you'll click here or go to slide 4. If you oppose occupational licensing, if you think it's a not so great thing, you'll click here or go to slide 5. Once you get to the slide of what you agree with, you are then going to argue with someone who disagrees with you. And so I want you to use the resources that you've looked at or read. And then I also want you to use your own opinion or your own personal experience with occupational licensing. As always, I also have the rubric, and this is how I'm grading your critical thinking questions. It's how I've been grading them and how I will continue to for the rest of the year. So there you have it. We're back in the fourth 9 weeks. You have this Ed Puzzle, the second Ed Puzzle, and your critical thinking question. Please reach out if you have any questions or concerns, and please stay on top of your work so that we're not in the end of May grappling to get all of your assignments turned in. Let's make it a great fourth quarter, and I hope to see you guys around the building.
Welcome back. Your dreams were your ticket.